So I wanted to ask you a question about that based on something I saw on your Wikipedia page. This is kind of just a fun one for you, I hope. I saw on your Wikipedia page, so let me know if this is actually correct, where you left England and part of your grievance was you were saying how conservative England was getting and how it was becoming just this kind of haven for big banks and big business. Um, but you decided to come to the United States. I mean,
Hmm.
unpack that for me, because to me that sounds like someone being like, "I am so sick of spaghetti. I'm moving to Italy."
Yeah, no, I hear your point. It wasn't England specifically. It was central London. So
Okay.
I lived in a neighborhood in central London where we saw the systematic removal of the kinds of offices and homes and business places that allowed normal people to live, in service to just converting most of central London to like empty safe deposit boxes in the sky and WeWorks that were, owned by offshore real estate investment trusts and dirty money from kleptocrats, while it became harder and harder for just normal people, even people with good middle class jobs, to survive. And became pretty clear that the administration of Greater London viewed human beings as an inconvenience to banks, and that the primary reason for London's existence was finance. So I didn't move to another finance capital. I now live in an entertainment capital, which is Los Angeles, which has its own problems. California has a really serious housing problem, but it's hard to convey. Although maybe now with the real estate bubble, it's starting to catch up, but it's hard to convey just how thoroughly the United Kingdom's politics had been disordered by the conversion of housing from a human right into the primary asset that people rely on not to starve when they get old, and how completely backwards the country had become as a result. So deadlocked on NIMBYism and the ability to build high density infill, deadlocked on transit, deadlocked on what to do about mounting homelessness. All that sounds familiar if you lived in Los Angeles, but
Sure.
as a matter of degree, I'm actually here to tell you that California's passed like a statewide rent control bill. We have anti-eviction laws all through the region, with the exception of a couple of small towns, which were then overridden by state law. We do have really significant initiatives to build both public transit and long haul high-speed rail,
Do you think
and
they'll
so on.
go anywhere? I mean, we've been talking about it forever.
Well, they're building subways in LA. Like, that's
That's
actually
true.
happening, right? They've broken ground. Whether we'll get dedicated bus lanes, which is, what LA absolutely needs, that remains to be seen. The problem isn't helped by charlatans like Elon Musk, who maintain the pretense that somehow we're going to be able to do this all with private vehicles, because, as Musk likes to say, when you get on a public bus, you might have to sit next to a serial killer. I mean, the problem for
I
Musk.
don't remember him saying that, but
Oh yeah.
that's something he would say.
Oh yeah. The problem for Musk is that geometry has a well-known socialist bias, and if you add up the square footage occupied by a single person vehicle for every person in LA, irrespective of how small you want to make that vehicle, and then multiply it by the amount of road surface that you need, you end up in this Red Queen's race where everything gets farther apart to accommodate the roads, and then you need more roads because people have to travel further. And I used to work for Disney Imagineering. My wife works for Disney. I spent a lot of time going back and forth to Disneyland from LA. And as someone who has watched 25, 30 years of lane widening construction on Highway 5, I'm here to tell you, like, it doesn't matter how many lanes you add to Highway 5. Highway 5 is going to be like a Hieronymus Bosch painting with cars forever, right? And,
That's fair.
we're up to, I don't know, like 78 lanes or something on stretches of the 5, and it's still a parking lot. So, I just think that, like, there is no way to solve a problem like Los Angeles without transit. Now, the good news for a place that's as bad as LA is that if you can turn every one-person car ride into a two-person car ride, you literally chop the amount of traffic in half. It's hard to get those gains, right? Like, getting a 100% gain with a single intervention is like, that's a big deal. You don't get a lot of those, right? Like, the next time we add one person to a car, it'll only be a 50% gain, and then it just goes down from there geometrically. But for now, like, there's a lot of easy wins that LA could have. You know, like we've just had a pretty landmark land use rule set out for LA County, where they approved a bunch of standardized additional dwelling units like granny flats, and told city councils that they weren't allowed to refuse planning permission if you had a lot size that could accommodate them. And you know, really at the stroke of a pen, you can now double the housing density of most of LA County, right? Which is pretty wild, right? Like, it's going to take a lot of work to double it again, but that first doubling came pretty easy.
That is encouraging. I mean, because, you know, the flip side to everything you're just saying is, you know, the overbloated budget for the LAPD, the sweeps that they're spending millions of dollars on that could go to housing. So yeah, I mean, we're certainly not without our problems, and we have a long way to go.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news